New friends, bad decisions. For the first week of school, I didn't have a large network of friends like I did later in college. This was because I didn't have an awesome party house to call my own. I went to every party I had time for, and there was never a shortage of parties. I bumped into a few familiar faces here and there, and made sure I kept fostering those relationships. The day I moved into my dorm, I had bumped into two guys named Terrell and Bryden. We had smoked weed together a few times in high school. Since we were in the stairwell of terror that day, we didn't get a chance to chat long. All I was able to get from them was that they were rooming together on the 13th floor. I kept seeing Terrell countless times after that day. I finally asked him if he wanted to smoke weed. Terrell had a car, so we started going on country drives to smoke blunts. After getting into a weed routine, Terrell asked me if a few girls he had met could tag along. This is when I met Lauren. Lauren had long blonde hair and tattoos all over her tan body. She had a nose piercing, a tongue piercing, and 2 industrial piercings in each ear. She was the exact opposite of my type, but for whatever reason, she was very alluring to me. It may have been because I hadn't seen a lot of girls in high school with tattoos and lots of piercings. At least none that were as attractive as Lauren was. Something told me to be careful around her and not get attached. For the first few days and nights, I would hang out with Bryden, Terrell, Lauren, and her roommate. There were 2 times that Ethan, my shitty antisocial roommate, came with us too. I was still trying to be civil and not exclude him, but he made it painfully obvious that he wasn't interested. This pissed me off because he was just a waste of my weed. I had to trust my instincts when it came to new people, and I didn't like him from the moment I met him. A valuable lesson learned for the rest of my life. I once tried smoking in Terrell's room, but it was quite the sketchy experience. We were not allowed to burn anything in the dorms. Incense, candles, anything. His entire floor didn't give a fuck. The first time I went up there to blaze, all I could smell was incense blended with weed. I remember thinking to myself that all the incense in the world wouldn't cover up that smell of weed. I was always a paranoid weed smoker. The worst kind to hang out with. When we got high in his room together, I became paranoid. I instantly felt trapped, and a feeling of impending doom washed over me. I thought the cops were going to kick in his door at any second. I said, "I gotta go to class," and that's the last time I smoked in his room. My classes were going well. I didn't find any of the content overly challenging. There was just a lot of it. One of my first assignments was for my University 100 class. The assignment was to bring something to class that was important to us. I hadn't fully thought through the assignment, and at the last minute, I decided to bring a keepsake box. I could have brought anything to class that day. I should have brought nothing. Instead, I brought the keepsake box that Brooke had made me. The outside of the box was designed with hearts and love poems. Inside the box were letters, pictures, movie tickets, and other relationship memorabilia. The other students went first. Some showed trophies, scars, religious symbols, and then it was my turn to present. A feeling of embarrassment came over me. I pulled out my little keepsake box and started to explain what it was. I thought chicks would like me if I was a sweet guy. I was so sweet, the girls wanted to make memory boxes for me. Ultimately, bringing the box in made me look like such a beta male. I should have brought a fucking lighter, or a piece of paper with a porn URL on it. Those were also important to me, and less embarrassing. Everyone was looking at me like I was a crazy man. Being high also made me feel like people were judging me. Paranoia. I questioned what I thought was important. This was probably the most embarrassing moment for me up to that point at school. When I was done presenting, the room was completely silent. When the next person started presenting, the guy sitting beside me nudged me and said, "Hey man, are you high?" I nodded, and he said we should hang out sometime. I was so happy. Finally, a new friend that liked smoking weed too. After our class was over, I introduced myself to him. He seemed pretty cool. And by cool, I mean a fellow pot smoker. His name was Paul Knox. A stocky, good-looking guy that had a baby face and a genuine smile. He was about 6 foot and seemed like a man's man, just like me. I was out partying all day and night after classes, Despite having met lots of girls at parties, I had remained a loyal boyfriend, and not for lack of opportunity. College was fucking crazy, and girls were more free-spirited beings when they weren't living with their parents. I had been at school for about a week when I went to a party with Bryden, Terrell, Lauren, and her roommate. After being at the party for a while, I got a little too drunk. I went out on the porch to get some fresh air. Unfortunately, everyone on the porch was smoking a cigarette, and I didn't get any fresh air at all. To help calm my buzz down, I pulled out my trusty one-hitter and packed up some weed. Lauren came out on the porch. She looked so attractive with my beer goggles on. She asked if she could have a hit, and I passed her my one-hitter. She took a long drag and exhaled a huge cloud of weed smoke. Then, she started kissing me. I didn't want to cheat on Brooke. She was far more breathtaking than Lauren was, especially drunk. This was such a moment of weakness. What was I doing? I pulled back at first, because I was afraid, as a million thoughts raced through my head. I was going to get in trouble for cheating. It was the first time in my life I retreated from sexual contact like that. When I realized it was too late because we had already started kissing, I embraced her, and we made out on the porch for the rest of the night. When we were done, all I could taste was cigarettes. I was living in the moment and not thoroughly thinking of the consequences of my actions. I completely neglected to think that I did have someone to answer to. Myself. How could I look at myself in the mirror now? I was dating a girl that I truly cared about, and I had just thrown it all away. I had made promises all summer to be loyal and amazing to her. Then as soon as someone grabbed my dick, I didn't exercise any self-control whatsoever. I was depressed when I got back to my dorm that night. I was just drunk enough to be able to push the thought of Lauren's cigarette-tasting mouth to the back of my mind. The next day, I would have to deal with the consequences of my actions. I didn't want to call Brooke drunk and try to explain myself. She deserved more respect than that. I would need to wait until I was sober before I could call her. I raced to the bathroom and puked, waking Ethan up in the process. When I was done, I crawled into bed and fell asleep.